So the title of this video, that Florida is banning DJI drones, is partially true. Essentially, they are banning the use of DJI and Autel and any Chinese-related drone for law enforcement and any state agency. Now, why should this matter to you? Well, this is part of the SUAS Blue List that was created last year, and it became into effect technically January 1st. Agencies had to do whatever they could to be able to migrate off of the use of Chinese-related drones. But as you know, there's not very many options out there that are American-made drones that can even compete with Autel, let alone DJI. But Governor DeSantis has recently put his foot down and said, that's it, no more. If it's made in China, it can't be used. You can own it if you want to use it privately, but if you're on the job, you're law enforcement, you can't use DJI or any Chinese-related drone for that matter. And the reason why I want to talk about this, and I feel like it's important to talk about this is an epidemic that could spread to other states if we're not careful. And it's something that needs attention, it needs awareness, it needs logical thought. And this is something I should have talked about long ago, but it was something that I didn't want to talk about simply because it revolves around politics. And I had two rules on this channel: no religion, no politics. But it's inevitable. There's no way to get around this. So that's what we're talking about in this video. Let's get started. Alrighty, so to take you back about a week ago, there was a committee meeting between 4 senators, 2 Democratic senators and 2 Republican senators. There was also the DMS Secretary, Pedro Alejandre, there as well. The premise of this committee meeting was to give agencies, law enforcement, first responders around the state the ability to talk about their use, their experience using these drones that they've been using for the past 4 years. They talked about how they save lives. They talked about how it made their jobs easier. And they also talked about the replacements being inadequate and unsafe. They're talking about Skydio, mind you. So if you're not aware, Skydio's been doing a shit ton of lobbying here in the state of Florida, probably more than any other state, because this is the first state that really has a clear-cut set of rules to effectively ban the use of Chinese-built drones. And again, that's called the SUAS Blue List. And Skydio saw that there was an opening, they saw that there was an in, and they began pouncing. And they began putting their X2s and their Skydio drones in the hands of law enforcement. But as you know, most law enforcement are pretty much the average Joe. They want to be able to use their drone, they want to know that it works, they want it to do whatever they needed to do in the moment to be able to save a life. And unfortunately, the X2 and the Skydio S2 is just not capable of doing so. It's actually less effective than you would think. Even though all of Skydio's creative marketing says otherwise, real-world use case does not lie. And unfortunately, the X2 falls short of expectations when it comes to first responders. And that's what they were talking about in this meeting. Secretary DMS Pedro Alejandre, who was appointed by Governor DeSantis, got a chance to talk. And he started touting off all these facts. And when he was pressured by Senator Pizzo of where he got this information from, he said it came from a vendor.
President Pasadoma's going to get angry at me. I just want to sort of sift through and bifurcate the political theater versus reality. You're sitting in a committee and you just held up a piece of paper that the manufacturer just handed you and represented that to this body?
Sir, back and forth.
Senator, it was simply an example of the vendor community coming to be responsive to the users. This is just one example. Anduril is another that has offered to buy the inventory to the extent that it makes sense.
That's right. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my leave for a couple minutes because here's what you don't do. You don't come to the Florida State Senate and hand up a piece of paper when the lives of men and women are at risk if we go and use that shit technology. Do you hear what I'm saying? These are men's and women's lives. I don't want to know. There's an old joke from Steve Buscemi in Armageddon. He says, do you realize when he's going up in the space shuttle, we're sitting on 2 million moving parts built by the lowest bidder? Don't ever do that again. Not while I'm here. When I leave, when I die, when I don't get elected, you can do that all day long. Don't ever do that again. You're pimping for a vendor right now. Shame on you.
And that vendor was Skydio. This didn't bode well with Senator Pizzo. Now, Senator Pizzo is a Democrat, and I typically Don't really agree with most Democrat agenda. I'm a Republican myself, and I'll just throw that out there, and I don't care what flack I get for it. But I typically don't agree with what most Democratic senators say. But everything he said, I was pumping my fist in the air saying, this guy absolutely gets it. When lives are on the line, having the best possible tool to do a job is more important than anything else. And he absolutely put everything aside, country of origin where this product was placed, and he just looked at it for what it actually was. And he called the secretary out on this for basically pimping for a vendor. And that's 100% what this guy was doing. He might as well have just walked in this meeting and said, hey, Skydio bought me a Ferrari. I mean, because that's literally what he was doing in this meeting. And this is something that keeps happening statewide. I've heard it from law enforcement agencies that I've been dealing with, and it's got to stop. It has to stop. But unfortunately, it's a little bit too late because Governor DeSantis announced yesterday that the ban is effective immediately. He wants these agencies to transition off of DJI and Autel drones and migrate over to whatever the Blue UAS compliant list consists of. But unfortunately, this is a very short list because as you know, and as well as I know, there aren't very many options out there. And there's not very many options out there that can even compete with Autel. Better yet, they couldn't even compete with DJI. They just can't. They don't offer the robust platforms for different use case scenarios that DJI and Autel have currently. For fuck's sake, Parrot drones offers better platforms than Skydio, and that is honestly saying something. Now, this was obviously the front runner for a solution for these departments to migrate off of, but something that nobody's talking about is the cost to do this. Remember that most state agencies are paid and funded by taxpayers. They have budgets and quotas and thresholds that they have to monitor each year. Now, most DJI drones for the enterprise world are anywhere from $6,000 to, we'll say, $10,000 for, like, let's say an M30, maybe a little bit higher, $14,000. You buy it once and you're done. And these departments can buy multiple drones to fill a department. You can get 6 or 7 drones for under your budget cap. With Skydio, specifically the X2, you never actually own the hardware. It is a lease-only hardware, meaning that you're paying per year for the software and for the lease. Now, this gets very complicated. Not only does it get very complicated, it gets very expensive, and it effectively limits how much a department can purchase each year because they never can actually exceed the number of drones they have because then the cost goes up. So let's say for the first year you buy 5 drones, and then the next year you want to add in 5 more drones. Now you have to times that by the payments you're already making. You can see how that can get expensive very quickly. Most of the departments that I deal with, they buy maybe 2 to 3 drones a year. These are smaller counties that don't have a high enough income ratio to support owning multiple UASs. And then there are some counties that have a Dragonfish, let's say, and they're able to support that because they absolutely need that. But now they're not going to be able to use these tools that they've relied on for the past 2 to 3 years because of politics. So this is where I'm going to get a little bit political. What I've seen over the past couple of months, and it's a rhetoric that's just increasingly growing, is this hatred towards Chinese products. We live in America. It's the freest, best country on planet Earth, right? I firmly believe that. You firmly believe that if you're watching this video. But something that we do as Americans is project our beliefs, our wants and wishes on other countries. And it's stupid. And part of the reasoning behind the hatred towards China is because of how they treat their people. And I get that. I understand that. It's terrible. But the way a country operates shouldn't be a reflection on a particular company, I should say. A country operating in a certain fashion should not be a reflection of a company. That's like me saying I don't like Nike because Nike pays kids in the Philippines like 25 cents to stitch a shoe on your J's. I mean, come on. You're all still going to go out there, you're still going to buy Nikes, even though some kid in a sweatshop made them, you know what I mean? Or Amazon pays their employees like shit, treats their employees like shit, but you're still going to order something with 2-day Prime. There's too many fucking double standards when it comes to products. And we need to start looking past that and look at what's the best tool for the job. Now, the claim is that these Chinese drones are unsafe because they are spying on the American people. There is literally no founded evidence from any independent study, even the military studies, that would suggest that is the case. Do you honestly think a company that puts geofencing on critical infrastructures or airports or even around Washington, D.C., would do that if they needed that data? If they needed to collect that information, they would want to make those drones as accessible and easy to get into critical areas as they possibly can. I want you to take your motherfucking tinfoil hat off for just a second and think fucking logically. If these companies had so much to gain by spying on us, they wouldn't make it so difficult to put these drones into areas that they shouldn't be. But that's not the case. They've done everything they could to make it safeguarded so they aren't put into these areas. DJI has even gone on to even make sure that their drones aren't used or weaponized for war. Now, the Ukraine situation aside, you can't help the Chinese government buying these drones, whether it be Autel or DJI, buying these drones and sending them to Ukraine. I'm going to tell you right now, at DroneWorks, we've had Ukrainians purchase large sums of drones for the war. So we're just as guilty of supplying drones for them to be weaponized or used in war. We're just as guilty. Both sides of the country. What makes it okay for Skydio to advertise that they are making military-safe drones, but it's not okay for Autel or DJI to do the same? It doesn't make any sense. There's too many fucking double standards in this world when it comes to products and the phobias surrounding it, because we have two opposing countries that just can't seem to collectively come together and just agree to disagree. But you, as an American person, are so willing to give your information over to YouTube, Facebook, Google, Instagram. You're so willing to give your data over to these American companies that essentially consumer weaponize that information against you. Isn't it ironic how you can go from one website to another and start seeing ads pop up on these websites? That's because they are collecting your data. They are harvesting the data. They are harvesting your interest. Our own fucking country is more guilty of spying on us than a fucking drone, if we're just being completely honest. It is such a fucking political stunt, it absolutely heats me up. It absolutely heats me up. And it's shameful that more people that give a shit about the SUAS industry aren't talking about that. And the reason they won't talk about it is a sensitive subject. I'm going to offend one side or the other with the things that I'm saying. But I don't give a shit about my career. I don't give a shit about the followers. I don't care. I care about the truth and I care about the right information. I'm not trying to white knight for any one company, because I know people at Autel. I know people at DJI. I've seen the people, whether it be in America or China, working, and they've always put innovation first. What Skydio has done to the market is preached and produced legislation versus innovation. And I'll just go ahead and throw up a couple of tweets here from the CEO of Skydio, Adam Bree, and I want to say it's government affairs, whatever his name is, John. I'll throw some tweets up here. This rhetoric of creating this consumer racism essentially against certain brands because of spying that's absolutely unfounded and no data has been provided is absolutely absurd. We've even just recently seen this with TikTok as well. And the people, the lawmakers that you've elected, don't even know what they're creating laws or what they're talking about. But I have to say, I will give Senator Pizzo credit because the dude gets it. He understands his shit and he just called it out for what it is. But this is something you have to think about. If you're not in Florida and you start hearing murmurs of your local government starting to create a list like this, you need to push back on it, because you're going to lose tools that are valuable to save lives. And at the end of the day, the best tool is the one you already have. The best tool is the one that could do the job as effectively and safely as possible. And unfortunately, here in America, we just don't have anything right now. Now, if Skydio had something that can do those things and do those things well, this would be a totally different conversation. I wouldn't be up here on my soapbox bitching about this, but this is a huge problem. And it's honestly, it's a huge blow to the law enforcement officers of this state. No matter what side of the aisle you sit on, Democrat or Republican, you have to agree that this is absolutely asinine. This is absolutely asinine. And I want you to think about this logically. I want you to think, I know this is hard because this is politics. Nobody can see across the aisle, and nobody can agree on things. But think about it. If a company was out to get us, if they were truly, truly out to get us, they would make it to where these products can be everywhere and do anything, and they can't. They've put safeguards in place because they respect our airspace, they respect our laws, and other countries are using them without incident. So what does that tell you? And I'm talking about both Autel and DJI. It's just not their MO. A country doesn't represent a company. That's all I'm saying. All right, that's it. I've been on this soapbox. It's hot. This is probably going to be a shit show in the comments, but hopefully you can understand my curiosity with this. I'm upset about this because I have friends that work here in the state of Florida, good people in Leos across the state that just got dealt a heavy blow to what they do every day to save lives. And that's just not cool.
I heard they checking for me, no one checking on me, so I had to go run up a check. I got the message on me, ain't no flexing on me, my attorney gon' call and collect. Blessings on blessings for me, my successes only made them envious, they got upset. I had to put all their egos in check. I want the money to